President Trump had never before ordered the closure of an airport. But that morning, an incident in Alaska's skies changed everything. At Anchorage International Airport, passengers moved through their routines, unaware that they were about to be caught in a story that would reach the White House. Deep in Alaska's snow-covered wilderness, one flight was about to prove just how dangerous air travel could become when things went wrong. It was a crisp winter morning at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. Travelers hurried through the terminals, clutching their coffee cups as they made their way to their gates. At Gate 37, a Boeing 737 sat ready for departure, appearing like any other routine flight. But beneath the surface, an undetected issue was quietly brewing, one that would soon lead to one of Alaska's most significant aviation incidents. The weather was ideal for flying, clear skies and smooth conditions, but perfect conditions can sometimes be deceiving. As passengers boarded, they had no idea they were stepping into an event that would forever alter aviation safety protocols. In the cockpit, the seasoned flight crew ran through their standard pre-flight checks. The aircraft had undergone its scheduled maintenance, and everything seemed in order. But sometimes, even the most meticulous safety procedures fail to catch a problem before it spirals into disaster. Takeoff was smooth, and the climb to cruising altitude appeared routine. Yet a subtle shift was beginning, too faint for most passengers to notice. In aviation, however, even the slightest anomaly can signal something far more dangerous. What was the first sign of trouble? And why did it send a chill down the spines of the experienced crew? Something was off. Just 23 minutes into the flight, a faint vibration began to ripple through the aircraft's right side. Most passengers remained unaware, settling into their seats, but those near the right wing sensed something unusual. Flying high above the Alaskan mountains, the vibration wasn't typical turbulence. It carried a steady, mechanical rhythm. In the cockpit, instrument readings detected minor fluctuations in the right engine's performance, subtle but enough to raise concern. Later analysis of the flight data recorder would reveal a slow but steady increase in the engine's internal temperature, rising 2 degrees per minute. Gradual enough to avoid triggering alarms, but steady enough to be troubling. The pilot soon noticed discrepancies in the engine's pressure ratio readings. Minutes later, the vibration intensified into a noticeable shudder. The engine's power output fluctuated, causing slight speed changes. In the cabin, drinks trembled on tray tables, and window shades rattled. Yet the cockpit's warning systems remained silent. The issue teetered on the edge of critical, serious but not alarming enough to trigger automatic alerts. Flight attendants, sensing something was wrong, exchanged uneasy glances, their instincts telling them this was no ordinary turbulence. Onboard computers displayed minor irregularities in fuel flow, hinting at mounting mechanical stress. To make matters worse, the aircraft was flying over mountainous terrain, where maintaining altitude was crucial. The crew carefully assessed their options while monitoring the engine's deterioration. Although radio communications with air traffic control remained routine, they were already preparing for the worst. The sky remained calm, but the worsening vibrations signaled an impending crisis. At the 30-minute mark, the engine's erratic behavior escalated, setting the stage for one of the most harrowing aviation challenges Alaska had ever seen. As the aircraft leveled off at 36,000 feet, minor irregularities turned into a full-scale emergency. The flight was no longer routine. The crew knew they were in a fight for control. Then the calm shattered. A thunderous noise ripped through the cabin. The right engine's cowling, a heavy metal cover, began to tear away. Passengers seated near the wing gasped in horror as parts of the engine became visible through the widening gap. The entire aircraft shook violently, marking the beginning of a mechanical crisis that would be studied for years to come. At 36,000 feet, the outside temperature was a bone-chilling 55 degrees Fahrenheit, pushing the already compromised engine to its breaking point. The partially detached cowling disrupted airflow, creating vibrations that threatened the engine's structural integrity. Flight data showed wild power fluctuations between 85% and 97% thrust, sending tremors through the fuselage that passengers could feel. Automated systems struggled to stabilize the aircraft as the cockpit was flooded with flashing yellow warnings and urgent alerts. Despite their extensive training, the crew found themselves facing a relentless cascade of challenges. The exposed engine was now operating in conditions it was never designed to withstand. The roar inside the cabin grew deafening as the disrupted airflow created a relentless vibration. Temperature sensors began returning erratic readings, complicating the emergency further. Following strict emergency protocols, the crew worked quickly, each decision now a matter of life and death. Ground radar tracked the unfolding disaster. As they turned back toward the coastline, the crew knew their options were limited. The nearest regional airports lacked the infrastructure to handle an emergency of this scale. Anchorage was their best bet, but making it there safely was no guarantee. Fuel became a major concern. The failing engine was consuming far more than normal, forcing the pilots to carefully manage reserves while preparing for an emergency landing. The aircraft's systems became increasingly erratic, piling on even more pressure. With the cowling on the verge of detaching completely, controlling the aircraft became a battle. The vast Alaskan wilderness stretched below them, offering few alternatives. The crew faced a critical choice: attempt a risky landing at a small regional airport or push for Anchorage, where a full emergency response team awaited. As the morning sun illuminated the damaged engine, time was slipping away. The crisis had escalated into one of the most severe in-flight emergencies in recent aviation history, setting the stage for a moment that would redefine safety protocols. Every second counted. The crew initiated a calculated emergency descent, knowing that lowering altitude would give them a better chance at control. But the damaged engine's unpredictable behavior made the descent treacherous. The autopilot was disengaged. The pilots took manual control, carefully guiding the aircraft through turbulent patches that could make the situation even worse. The flight management system lit up with warnings as rapid descent and asymmetric thrust pushed the aircraft's limits. What had started as a routine flight was now a desperate struggle for survival, and every moment brought them closer to a decision that could mean the difference between life and disaster. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as the aircraft systems struggled to stabilize. Urgent radio chatter filled the airwaves as air traffic controllers swiftly cleared a path through the congested sky, rerouting flights to ensure a protective buffer around the distressed plane. Meanwhile, the engine's condition worsened, showing alarming signs of metal fatigue. The detached cowl had set off a chain reaction of mechanical failures, further jeopardizing the aircraft's stability. Every passing minute increased the risk of catastrophic damage, yet the remaining engine thrust was vital to keeping the plane aloft. Fuel management became a critical concern. The failing engine was consuming more fuel than usual while delivering less power. The closest airport was 23 minutes away, a daunting distance in an emergency. As the aircraft descended through shifting air densities, the compromised aerodynamics made controlling it an ongoing challenge. The crew made constant, calculated adjustments, fighting against forces that threatened to push them off course. Emergency teams across the Alaskan mountains mobilized, preparing for any outcome. Medical personnel stood by, ready for the worst. The flight management system struggled to compensate for the engine damage, forcing the crew to rely on their training rather than automation. At 15,000 feet, denser air provided improved control, but increased stress on the failing engine. The wind howled through the damaged cowling, its eerie whistle echoing through the cabin. Working through emergency checklists, the crew achieved small victories, staying ahead of the unfolding crisis. But the most critical phase was yet to come. With reduced thrust, they needed a longer runway, and shifting wind conditions forced continuous course corrections. As Alaska's snow-covered peaks loomed closer, ice accumulation around the engine components revealed the full extent of the damage. What had begun as a routine flight had become a national emergency. The crew braced for a landing few pilots ever face, bringing down an aircraft with a crippled engine and compromised controls. Their intended destination was now out of reach, but returning to Alaska would mean survival. Managing their speed with precision, they avoided both excessive acceleration which could push the failing engine beyond its limits, and slowing too much, which risked dangerous ice buildup on the wings. In Anchorage, air traffic controllers cleared an emergency corridor, ensuring an unobstructed path. As the aircraft neared the runway, deploying the landing gear introduced new challenges. The sub-zero temperatures, powerful winds, and increased drag made maintaining control incredibly difficult. Yet, with meticulous adjustments, the crew guided the plane lower. The runway lights, nearly swallowed by the raging snowstorm, were their only beacon. There was no turning back. This was their only chance. Landing under such extreme conditions required extraordinary skill. With unwavering focus, the crew executed a precise touchdown on the icy runway. The entire ordeal had lasted just 47 minutes, but for those on board, it had felt like an eternity. President Trump responded immediately, ordering the temporary closure of the airport and commending the crew's heroic efforts. "Thank God they turned back," he stated in an emergency press briefing. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.